those things. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think there's a lot of truth to that. Now that said, you asked about what's replacing, what's being jettisoned. There is searching going on here. These are not people, young people are not apathetic at all about religion and spirituality. They're driven, I think, with spiritual questions and concerns. The issue is that they're not finding answers inside the institutions. And they're skeptical of institutions. They don't trust big institutions. They tend to trust smaller groups. They tend to trust their friends. They tend to trust, frankly, online sites like Facebook or something, where they're getting, information. And so they're just not going to the traditional religious places, but they have a hunger. They have a spiritual hunger that's palpable, and they're grasping around for things. And I think there's a poignancy to it. But, they're kind of alone. Like, how am I going to make sense of my experience? How am I going to make sense of the world? And they don't want to run to a church to do that, and then they don't really know where else to turn.
I've been speaking with Stephen Prothero, chair of the religion department at Boston University, author of some important books, including American Jesus and Religious Literacy, What Every American Needs to Know and Doesn't. I'm Peter Marty, and I'll be back in a moment with some reflections.
For some people, the idea of grace is an abstract theological concept, but that isn't true of Inez.
Grace is basically my ticket to wholeness, but at the same time, grace means I don't have to be whole or perfect, because God already is. Grace means that nothing can separate me from God, or God's love, or God's presence, and it also means that God is always present, always loving, and continuously leading me as I struggle. I struggle to learn how to surrender my will to God. At the same time, grace is what makes that struggle even possible. I couldn't be here without grace.
Every week, Grace Matters brings you conversations with people who found evidence of God's grace in their lives. You can help be part of God's grace at work in the world with your support of this ministry. Please come to gracematters.org and click on Support Grace Matters to do your part. Thank you so much for your partnership.
Welcome back to Grace Matters.
Stephen Prothero has left us with a lot to think about. If you're troubled by his findings that there is an epidemic of religious ignorance in America, these reflections are for you. If you are less troubled and more intrigued by his assessment that America is a nation with fervent religious belief but little religious knowledge, these reflections are also for you.